Prior to joining Unique Venues, Joel completed a 25-year career at the University of Arizona in Tucson, where he retired as the Associate Vice President for Academic Initiatives and Student Success. Throughout that career, he served primarily in management, financial, and operational roles for large auxiliary departments such as housing and residential life and the Arizona student unions, and in administrative leadership roles for Arizona Online and the Arizona Distance Campus Network. His background in conference services includes 6 years as the conference services manager for the UA, 11 years of service to the Akuho'ai Conference Services Workshop Committee, including 2 years as the chair and the delivery of multiple presentations for ASTI, Akuho'ai, NACIS, ACUI, and ResLife.net, and other topics related to the business and operational side of collegiate conference services. And now to present today's general session, Keeping the Pipeline Full, Building a Sales Action Plan to Achieve Results, is Joel Hoff.
All right. Everybody hear me okay? My mic is on, coming through the room? Perfect. All right, I'm going to set this down there and hopefully not kick it as we go today. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here in front of you all. And as everybody's kind of said, it's really great to be doing this again in person. I've had the opportunity the last few months to travel around and go to a couple of conferences and do presentations. And it really is nice to be doing it in person. One of the things I found early on when I started doing the webinars for Unique Venues, and it was 83, and I know because I had a hand in almost every single one of them, the first time I presented on Zoom I was horrible. Absolutely terrible, because it was so weird being on a webinar and I couldn't see anyone else. Like, maybe I could keep an eye on the chat and know what was going on, but I didn't know if people were engaged, if people were laughing at my jokes, if people had fallen asleep. Took a little bit of while getting going again, and it's so nice to be back in a room where I can look into your eyes, you can look into mine. That means if you do fall asleep, I'm going to notice. I'll try not to call you out. But it's great to be able to get that feedback and have an engaged session once again. And that's what I want to do today. Today is going to be a discussion. I am going to do a lot of talking. That's just the nature of this because we've got a limited window of time. But I'm going to ask you some questions as I go along. Now, I may ask for some feedback from the room, but more what I really want you to be able to do is you've got those notepads in front of you, or some of you have your own books and notepads or your laptop or whatever your style is. I want you to write things down today that resonate with you, okay? So you don't have to answer all the questions. Some of you may be like, I got that covered, I'm good here, but here's something else that's challenged me that I want to think about. We will make the slide materials, the decks, available to you. So don't feel like you have to write down every stat and every question and everything like that. Just write down the things that are important to you. Because what I want you to be able to do today is I want you to be able to leave here with the beginnings of a sales action plan. What's that? There we go. I want you to believe with the beginnings of a sales action plan that you can go back and you can spend some time, there we go, getting ready to reactivate your pipeline. Now again, if you are totally full and booked for the next 3 summers and everything has come back beautifully, I apologize, hopefully you pick up some good stuff, but this might not be relevant. But my guess is that most of you are trying to figure out how to refill your calendars, refill space, replace some groups that have left or just aren't coming back with the numbers that they have had in the past, and that you're really looking forward to how are we going to build our business back to not only what it was, but to be better than what it once was. Now, before we do that, what I want you to do is I want to spend a little bit of time reflecting on the past 3 years. I know Chuck said we don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm going to talk about it for 60 seconds because I think it's really important that we all acknowledge the fact that our lives were not just disrupted, but turned completely upside down when the pandemic hit in March of 2020. I mean, you heard us talk a little bit about this conference, right? Lisa's been so excited to have everyone here, and that got put on hold for 2.5 years. Many people in this room, I know, based on where you're at, and you weren't doing events, you were asked to all of a sudden jump in and do other things, right? So some of our people that are in the higher education segment, I know that they ran their testing centers on their campuses. You know, I know that other people jumped in and started doing logistical things at their facility so they could stay employed and have a reason they were drawing a paycheck, but they were running around acting as Uber facility managers, or they shifted completely into a totally different role for a period of time. And the reason I want you to reflect on that a minute and think about what did you have to go through during those 2.5 years? Because my guess is you weren't spending a lot of that time doing your strategic planning for when you got out of the pandemic, right? I mean, when we first got into this, we were all drinking from a fire hose. We didn't know what it meant. Depending on what you were challenged or asked to do, that's what your daily focus was. And some of you may even still be doing some of that stuff. No matter how much we want to say that this is over, there are still a few things that linger out there. And you may have some responsibilities you picked up that you haven't let go of yet, or you may still be trying to just now, today, in this room for the first time in 3 years, take a deep breath and say to myself, I'm going to think forward for a change instead of just in the moment, what's in front of me or what I've just been through. Does that resonate with people? This has been a common experience that I think a lot of event people, that venue managers have shared, is simply this, I had to shift gears completely, because you're the experts, right? You're the people that know how to get stuff done. That's why you run meetings and events. And so people know that. I mean, it'd be nice if you got that credit when there wasn't a crisis for you to jump in and deal with. But now there is that recognition, and hopefully now you're getting some time for you to step back and think about where do we go. And that's what we want to talk about today, is where is it that we go next? So what I want to do really quickly is talk a little bit about some industry trends that are important for us to think about as we come out of the pandemic and look forward to refilling our pipelines. The first one is that we are living in a truly digital ecosystem. And when I say that, what I mean is at this point in time, the pandemic, I mean, we were 90% of the way there anyways. The pandemic pushed us over that final finish line, right? At this point in time, because we all had to stay at home, lock ourselves in, and use technology for everything, we are committed as a society. Again, great to see everyone here today. There are still lots of events that have figured out that a hybrid or a fully virtual approach is better for them, and they're not going back. There are many meetings on your campus that you used to probably all get together, or your venue, the place that you're at, your organization, that you used to get together in person. And now you are doing that over Zoom because it's just easier. In a lot of cases, people haven't come back to work. They're allowed to work remotely. Again, I think that's a huge cultural shift, and I think it's a great one for society, but it changes the way in which we all interact with one another, and we live in a digital ecosystem. And a couple of months ago, I was moderating a keynote panel for the Meeting Planners International chapter in Arizona. And we were talking about this, and I got the chance to spend lunches and some breaks talking to planners. They are all sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning in their pajamas with a tablet or a phone or a laptop searching for the location for their next meeting and event. That's what they are doing now. Everything is about what they can find online, what kind of information they can get at, how much investigation and work they can do before they make a decision about where it is they want to book their next meeting and event. It is all about the digital in this day and age. We're going to talk a lot about what it means to live in that digital ecosystem. If you've been used to the traditional style of more of that engaged stuff, the phone calls, the sales visits, the things like that, those are still important pieces, but we are all about making sure that we can be competitive in a digital ecosystem. And let's not kid ourselves. We are all great friends. We're going to have a wonderful time here, but every lead that comes out, every person in this room is competing with every other person in this room to land that lead and put it in their facility. So again, if this is something that you have not had time to focus on, this is our chance to be able to do that. The second trend is that planners have a heightened sense of urgency, but they're still cautious about pulling the trigger. So this is something I've heard from a lot of clients lately, is that planners are like, you got to get me that info, you got to get me that info, I'm really ready to do this. Then you get it to them and they go into the witness protection program and you can't get them to sign on the dotted line. Does this resonate with anyone out there? Because they're still nervous about what's going to happen. And it may not even be about pandemic anymore. There's lots of things going on in the world. It's supply chain issues and politics and you name it, where planners are still really cautious about saying they want you to be ready to commit. they're not quite ready to do it yet. And so there's some balancing act that has to go on in terms of nurturing people and bringing them along to that finish line out there. Another trend is that I've heard from some people they had good summers or strong summers, or that they're, since they've opened back up, their venue business has been solid. But in a lot of cases, attendance is lower than normal because budgets and health concerns are still a factor. So many times it was like that group was always 400 that was coming in and using the museum gallery, and now this year it was 200. And we don't know yet if it's going to rebound and come back, or if 200 is the new norm, because again, people have just they're thinking differently about the kinds of events and the kinds of meetings that they want to attend, and budgets are not back yet. I mean, we have a great group here, it's great to see everyone, but this is about a half to 2/3 of what the normal size of UVAMC would be, and we heard from lots of clients it's simply because travel hasn't been approved for them yet. And the fourth trend is that expectations for revenue and headcount are at traditional levels, pre-pandemic. So people are saying to you, well, I hear you that your groups are smaller, but I want you back making the kinds of money or seeing the number of heads in the facility that we had prior to the pandemic. And so again, I would imagine expectations are high for everyone. What I want to be able to do is I want to give you some strategies to start to think about building that plan. And again, this is not something you can go back and just say, hey, I'm going to put an hour on my calendar, I'm going to build my sales action plan to keep my pipeline full, right? This is going to take some work, but we're going to give you the framework for how to think about all that stuff over the next couple of hours today. All right. Let's talk a little bit now. We're done talking about the past. Let's talk about moving forward. Because the idea is that you're here because you're ready to start going out and making things happen. And I think it seems awfully contradictory for us to move forward by going back to what it was that we've done before. I gave you some trends to think about, but any of us that think we can just say, hey, let me pull out my binder from 3 years ago and go back to my standard operating procedures is probably kidding themselves just a little bit because of the trends that we've noticed, and simply because, again, in that 3 years' time, everything has continued to evolve in the meetings and events industry. We need to be thinking differently than we have before. Now, one of the nice things about this disruption and this break that we had to take to some extent is that it does really give us the opportunity to reevaluate our mission. And I'd like everyone to, as you're thinking about things today, and this is a great place to start, ask yourself, do you really want to go back to simply serving all of the groups and events that you did before? Because I've had clients this year that have said they've really used this as an opportunity to cull their list and say, you know what, I have 3 or 4 groups that are just a gigantic pain in the neck to work with, and this is my opportunity to say, I'm really sorry things have changed over the last 2 years, we can't accommodate you anymore. Or if you've traditionally given a big discount to someone because they've been on, this is your opportunity to level set the field and to say, you know what, we're coming back, but I'm sorry you're going to have to be at this level if you want to continue to use our venue. And they may not like that, and they may go elsewhere, and again, that might be the effect that you're looking for, or it may be that they accept the fact that it's time to level set and reset the playing field just a little bit. And so I want everybody to think just a little bit today about, what is it that you've got going on? So, for many of you, it's all about revenue generation, and that might be what your focus continues to be. But for various types of venues in the room, there might be other service missions that you want to focus on, or that have become just as equally or more important depending on kind of where your organization is heading after the pandemic. For a higher education setting, that might be a recruitment or an enrollment mix thing. So it may be before we were simply about putting any large group in the facility and making it happen. Now it might be about, because again, the pandemic has had an impact on enrollments in higher education, it might be about looking at those things and saying, we want the right kinds of groups and events here. Those that are pre-college students, those people maybe with socioeconomic or diversity indicators that are the ones that are going to help us get to the direction that we're going. It's a great time to have that conversation as you start to think about what you're going to book in 2024 and 2025. Reputation might be another one. I mean, depending on how your venue has weathered the storm, it might be that you want to do some things that really showcase your value within your community, within your geography, or simply just the fact that you can do some of these things again, because people have been concerned about, can I come back and be as strong as I really once was? Some of it might be about public service. The pandemic has broken down a lot of walls between physical venues, physical spaces, and the communities around them. A lot of people transition to be different testing centers or drop-off locations or different kinds of things in partnership with the community around them. And that might be a new part of your mission to be able to continue to serve that in some way. You've got to balance that in with the other priorities that you might have. But this is a good opportunity to say, is this something that's important to us? And then also space utilization and maximization. So is the desire at this point, what I've heard from several clients is, it's maybe not so much about how many groups or what the total head count looks like. Is it really more about maximizing the spaces that we have? So again, instead of spreading everything like peanut butter and using all 60 of our facilities all day long, but sporadically, one here, one here, one here, do we, and this ties into staffing, right? If you don't have enough staff to manage all that, are we kind of shrinking down our footprint, but then using our staff to flip it and turn it and do a higher level of service or a better job than we're able to do now, given our staff limitations or given the profiles of the groups that are coming in. So it's an opportunity for you to think about, to kind of set the stage for, what are you going to fill your pipeline with? What are the kinds of groups that you want? What are your big picture targets and initiatives? And if it's time for a change, then think that way as we go through all the strategies out there, so that you can develop a concrete and measurable plan for achieving results. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through a series of, there we go, I think this thing goes to sleep if I talk for too long, but that's just the way it's going to be. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a series of questions for pretty much the rest of this first hour. And I'm going to challenge you, and again, write down the things that resonate with you. What you're going to need to do first as you sit down to build the sales action plan is to establish some goals. And when we work with clients to go out and do sales action plans on our consultations, this is exactly where we start, which is, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? So what are the specific measurable goals that you want to achieve with a new sales plan? What are you trying to do? Again, we just listed a bunch of things. What are those things? When do you want to or need to achieve them by? So again, is this something you have to get done in the next 6 months? Is this going to be a 2-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan? Like, what are those goals, and where do you need to get this accomplished by? Because again, that's going to kind of drive which strategies you employ, or how many different strategies you employ to achieve those results. And what are the key milestones that you can track that you can use to track progress, build momentum, and report success along the way? So I think it's really important whenever I say, okay, I would like to grow my business by 25% by 2025. That's a measurable, achievable goal. But a lot of times people stop there and say, that's my goal. I want to get there by 2025. And then all of a sudden, the beginning of 2025 sneaks up on them, and they're like, gosh, we've only grown 8% so far. I got a big lift that I got to do this year. So what you want to do is you want to break that down with some milestones. It's like, I want to see 5% growth in 2023. I want to be at 15% in 2024, so I can be at 25% in 2025, right? Give yourself those key milestones. Give yourself the indicators. Again, if it's space utilization and maximization, I want to be at 60% here, 75% here, 90% here. Give yourself some targets, because as you go along, you want to be able to measure that and say, am I on track? And either start the messaging with your supervisor or whomever you report to about why you're going to adjust the goal downward potentially, or accelerate the strategies that you're using to get back on track and still achieve that goal. All right? That's the first step, is to figure out what is it that we're trying to do. The rest of this then is, how are we going to get there? So we're going to talk today in the first hour, about foundational strategies. And these are ones I think that are overlooked often, because a lot of times everyone in here is going to say, yeah, I already do all of that. But I don't think we ever stop and critically analyze what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. So we're going to spend some time in the first hour today talking about foundational strategies that tie into your sales action plan for achieving growth. The first one is the website. customer relations management software, data harvesting, memberships, DMOs, direct management organization, or your CVBs. And Susan's going to do a great presentation. Is it today or tomorrow? Today, later this afternoon, on relationships with DMOs, referrals, and marketplace. These are things that everybody should be doing as a foundational way of attracting interest and bringing people into the pipeline and moving them through that sales funnel as much as reasonably possible. We're going to dig into each one just a little bit. And I have some questions for you that I'm going to back up with some statistics. So on the first one here, is your website a sales-oriented tool with information that planners are searching for? Remember, they're sitting in their pajamas at 2 in the morning with a tablet looking at your website to see if you're a fit for their next event. Do you have information on your website that they're actually looking for? Some statistics. 89% of B2B researchers use the internet during the B2B research process. And this is a 2020 survey, so it's probably gone up into the 90s somewhere since then. On average, B2B researchers do 12 searches prior to engaging on a specific brand site. That means that if they're looking for an event in St. Petersburg, they've probably looked at least 12 different venues where that event could potentially take place. And you're just one of many options for them out there. And then 57% of the buying process is done prior to engaging with sales. Think about that for a second. Before you know they even exist, they've already almost made up their mind. 57% of that process, 7% of the buying process done prior to them reaching out and saying, hey, I'm interested in your venue. Which means your website becomes super critical in making sure that they eventually do reach out to you and signal that. Now, when I was building online education, and I'll make a couple of parallel references to that today, we called those people stealth applicants. So we would know nothing at all about who was thinking about an Arizona online education until they sent in an application. We didn't talk to them, we didn't email with them, we didn't know what they were thinking, they just dropped an application in our laps. And that's the world that we live in, is that you won't know anything at all is going on, and they're going to send you that, can you get me a proposal by tomorrow, because I'm in a hurry, and then I'll go into witness protection program and not sign on the line for 3 weeks. But that's the way that the world works out there, all right? So let's look at your website. Your website needs to tackle 3 key questions for planners. The first one is, what problem can you solve? Now that's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, what problem can you solve? You need space, I have it. You need services, I have it. But that's a very general way of thinking about it. They want to know details specifically about how many rooms, how big are they, how can they be set up, what do they cost, do they have technology, can I bring food? Like, all of these different things are a part of that. What problems are there that you can solve for me? What needs can you fulfill? So again, I need registration, I need giveaway bags, I need, what are the things again that a planner might need that you can fulfill for them? Do you tell them on your website when they're browsing at 2 in the morning that you're able to do those things for them? And then, because you're competing against everyone else in this room, why are you better than everybody else? So what is it that you bring to the equation beyond a box that has tables and chairs in it that drives a planner to want to choose you over those other 11 search locations that they're looking at the same time? Do you have a brand promise, a service promise on there? Do you talk about your staff, about your expertise, the background, the things that they do? I mean, some people, feel uncomfortable throwing their names and their resumes up there. I mean, you don't have to throw your resume, but people want to know if you've got letters after your name, if you're a CMP or a CCEP or, any of those various alphabet soup things that are important to meeting planners out there. Or if you've got 25 years in the hospitality industry and you were a private planner yourself and then you migrated to your venue and you're looking at it the other way, like, that speaks to a planner in a way that's important at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're looking through your website and deciding, is this venue a good fit for me? And then really important, and this is the one that just makes me, crazy all the time. I get a client that says no one's submitting leads, no one's, working through our website. And then I go look at their website. Is your website focused on what planners and individuals can do, or is it focused on what they cannot do? Because a lot of times I go to a venue site and it's a laundry list of things that they can't do. You can't be here during these months. You can't be here. You can't bring your own food in. You can't bring your own technology in. You can't do this, that, or the other thing. And they wonder why no one's reaching out to them. Like, it is important to tell planners that, but I don't think that that is something you lead with on the homepage of your website. And I've seen that, right? And I get it. People are frustrated. This is my 13th call this week of someone saying, can I rent your venue and I want to bring my own food in? So it goes right up front, no outside food allowed. But that's not a very welcoming message for a planner out there. That's later in the funnel. That's after they have discovered what you have and they've done some evaluation and they're getting into the intent phase. That's when you can let them know. And you can put it in an FAQ. So it can be out there somewhere, and if they really go after it, they can find it. But so many people, and again, I know we have a lot of higher ed clients in this room. Higher ed is very notorious for this. They like to lead with what you can't do instead of what you can do. And again, I saw some people nodding and thinking, I got to go back and work to update my website a little bit. And that's okay. That's the point today. The last thing to think about for your website is it mobile tablet friendly? Which again, a lot of times I know we really struggle with. Now, I've seen some great websites out there that do wonderful in a tablet or a mobile environment. When you shop for stuff, how often are you shopping for it on this? Right? You're looking, and you've gone to clunky websites, or ones that don't load very quickly. Like, that's the one that really gets me. Like, basically they say you've got about 3 seconds for it to load something interesting up. And if it doesn't, what do? You hit the back button and you go to the next one on the search. We all do it, which means they're doing it to you. And if you're not thinking that way about their experience, then you're missing out on who knows how much potential business that might be out there. Again, this is not glamorous stuff to talk about. And just because you change your website does not mean all of a sudden you're going to add 300 events a year. But you're going to miss out on 300 events a year if you don't go back and take care of some of these things. Okay? Website, first foundational strategy. And see, it goes to sleep if I think too long. Come on, there we go. Next up is your CRM, your customer relations management system. How many people are using a CRM of some type? Okay, so I see fair range. Otherwise, Excel spreadsheets maybe, or a Word document or something, right? I see a couple hands go up out there. In this competitive digital ecosystem, and Chuck talked about it earlier, right? I mean, if you're not on something in 24 hours, they're moving on. The same thing is about if there's an opportunity out there, if you're not blasting it out to people or making them aware, then you're missing out on it. Are you using a CRM for managing contacts and messaging history? And it's important for it not just to be about the contacts, but to be about the message history as well. So at Unique Venues, we use a product called Free Agent. And there's lots of products out there that you can use that actually are really affordable. So if you can't get into your organization's big Salesforce implementation, because they won't carve it out or they won't let you see that data, or all the different reasons that come into play with why you might not be able to do that. Or if you simply feel like I have to go spend $15,000 on a solution, that's not true. You can actually get a single license instance of Salesforce that has almost everything you would want to use in a CRM for $75 a month, right? This does not have to be a huge instance. Our instance of Free Agent, which is, we've got several of us that are in there. What's great about it is not only does it manage our contacts and allow us to tag them with the different kinds of opportunities and things like that, but we can see all message history. It hooks into our Outlook. So if there's something going on and a client reaches out and they want to talk to me about a consultation, the first thing I do is I go into Free Agent and I pull up that client and I can look backwards across 3 months, 6 months, 2 years worth of message history. I automatically know what other people in the company are talking to them about, and I can tailor my conversation to that based on the context of what's going on, or I can know pitfalls or things to avoid. Right? Like if someone had a conversation 3 months ago with Jock about a digital brochure and he was like, not interested in digital brochures, I don't want to do that, I don't come into my initial conversation bringing all of that stuff up again. right? These are real strategies that are effective in the investigation, the sales process, that your CRM can help you with. Is it configured correctly to assist you with future outreach? So again, are you able to put in information about the success or the conversations you're having? Are you able to tag things as hot prospects or hot leads? Are you able to very quickly pull a list and say, these are the 35 planners that are going to be really interested in this opportunity. Can I blast this out there and make it happen? But it's got to be set up and configured that way. And again, some of those easy, lower cost solutions come custom built to help you do those things. And then, are you regularly evaluating the success of your outreach efforts using established metrics for success? Now again, this is one of these things that we are always so busy, we always don't go back and really say, how did I do? What was my success rate with this particular campaign or this particular activity? Now I want to show you really quickly, just to give you a sense of scale, what you would do with your CRM to evaluate something. So let's say that we did an email blast out to people. So we've got 1,000 names in our database. We're going to blast out a message to people like book by November 15th and get 10% off or something like that. So that you know, and they're up here, again, you'll get the deck. The average engagement rates for the travel, hospitality, and leisure industry, the average open rate of that email is a little over 20%. So that means of the 1,000 that you send out, little over 200 of them are going to get opened up. Now, I will tell you that those rates are probably inflated in this day and age, because at Unique Venues, we send these things out and we get open rates, but we know a lot of it is because your venue, your organization's spam filter is opening every email we send to do a run on it, and that triggers backwards to say that it was open. So I think in this day and age, open rates is not the best metric to evaluate, because I do think they're a little bit inflated and probably will continue to be inflated over time. The more important one then is the click-through rate. And that's where someone has clicked on a link in your message. Your click-through rate for travel and hospitality is about 1.4%. So of those 1,000 that you send out, it means that 14 people are going to open it up and click through a link. All right? Think about that for a second. If you want to add 150 events and you're only getting 14 people to click through on it, just because they click through does not mean that they're going to book an event at your venue. It means they're more interested than the other 186 people that didn't click through on anything in there. Now, some of those people might actually be stealth people, go check your website, come back and book an event. We just, these are the things that why you get it in CRM, you can, when someone books an event, look back and say, what kinds of activities have we done with them? What kinds of email blasts, what kind of phone call campaigns, sales calls, all those different kinds of things. The click to open rate then means it's about 8.7%. So of the people that open an email, only about 8.5% actually click through and do bigger research. And your unsubscribe rate is pretty much, under 1%. It's 0.2%. That means every time you do one of these blasts, you get that person that says, please remove me from this list, which you have an obligation to do, and you take them off or you turn them off or flag them until you find a way to re-add them or reflag them again. And again, I've given you the numbers up there, all right? So this gives you a sense of scale as to why it's important to track these metrics. Because again, I've had clients be like, well, I sent out 30 email messages. I'm like, well, that's great. When we look at the rates, that means you're lucky if you had one person engage in a level that just takes them one step lower on the funnel, which means you've got to be collecting and gathering lots and lots and lots of information to push out to people out there. But you won't know until you track it. And again, everyone's experience is going to be a little bit different, and it also depends on how engaging the content is that you're sending out to people. All right. So that takes us then to the next one, which is data harvesting. So if you're using a CRM, great, but then you've got to have stuff to put into that CRM. And again, this is not glamorous, but this is part of the equation if you want to think about what kinds of strategies you're going to employ moving forward. So what are the strategies that you use to add context to your CRM database on a regular basis? Because you can't just keep, Chuck likes to say, you can't keep fishing in the same waters, right? If you've got a database of 8,000, and that's the only 8,000 you ever send your stuff to, and they're not responding and they're not booking business, well, again, I heard a story the other day from a client that had someone reach out from an activity from 7 years prior. That's great, and it does happen out there, but that's probably not the strategy that you want to follow. You need to constantly be refreshing and adding to your CRM with new ranges of contacts. So where do you get those things from? Well, the first thing you can do is you can do internet searches, right? There are all sorts of places where you can go out. You can go to allconferences.com. You can go to Yahoo Yellow Pages. Again, a lot of times we'll tell people you want to target the religious market, go to Yellow Pages and put in your area and look for places of worship, churches and places of worship. You'll find 800, 1,000. Detroit had 2,300 or something like that, churches and places of worship. Then you go to every church website, and you look for a youth pastor, a director of music education, a whomever on the list. And many times there will be emails, more often than not, and you add them to your CRM. And before you know it, you've got another 1,200 names that you can start promoting religious activities to. Now, I get it. All of you are saying, I don't have time for that. And that's absolutely the truth. I would not expect people in this room to be doing that. What you need to do is find a good cost-effective way to do that. So can you hire an intern? Is there somebody else in your organization that has like a desk job where half the time they're waiting for a phone to ring or someone to walk in that you can give a list and say start going through as you have time and do this? Now, you got to have the right person. Now, my daughter did this for me, actually, in the middle of the pandemic when we were doing some harvesting activities. And she's the perfect person because she was the one that loved the challenge of trying to find a phone number or an email address. And she'd be like, oh, why do these people not have their email in here? And she'd say, maybe if I click here, I go here, or I do another search. What you don't want is the person like, no email address, moving on, right? So you got to find the right person to do it. But when done effectively, you can add thousands of names to your CRM through internet searches. I'm not expecting you to do it. Find the right person to do it. Membership lists. Are there membership lists within your own organization, within parallel organizations? Are you a part of MPI or PCMA or SGMP or any of the places out there where you might be able to, again, log in, look up. They don't make it easy for you, but you log in, you look at the membership directory, and you just start entering them into your CRM so that as you're pushing information out, they're getting the information that you're looking for. Trade shows or other large event attendance lists. Like if you're going to trade shows and they're providing it to you, again, it's great when they give it to you in a nice CSV format and you can just dump it right in. If they're giving you a hard list or something like that, then you find somebody. Again, if you're higher ed, you find a student. If you're another venue and you've got someone that's got the time and they just sit there and enter it all into a spreadsheet and then you put it into your CRM. This is the way that you add and you start fishing in new areas instead of fishing in the same areas you've been doing over and over. And then finally, purchase lists. Now, I will say that at unique venues, we don't really use purchase lists any longer. There was a period of time that we would use them, and the reliability of the purchase list was not really that great. Like you'd be lucky if like 30% of the names and emails were actually valid off of the list that you were purchasing. But at the end of the day, 30% of the names and emails were valid. So you've got to measure the cost benefit of, again, how much are you trying to get in there? If it's a really specialized target audience that you want to go after, it might be worth paying the $500 or $2,500 or whatever it might be to get 15,000 names, knowing that only 5,000 of them might be valid, but that's still 5,000 more than you started with before you went out and purchased that list. So again, I'm not going to, it's the fourth strategy I put on the list because it's probably the least preferred, but sometimes it can be effective and it is a way to boost the amount of contacts that are in your CRM out there. All right? And again, we said, are there cost-effective ways? Find that person that can do it. And can you tap into other organizational databases? So again, look at your own organization and say, if I'm a museum, can I tap into the patron list in some way? Or can I tap into the school district list, right? Maybe they've got a list of all the school district information for people that are coming to the museum for tours. Can I tap into that and put it in my side to also promote the availability of the space for other meetings and events. So, you don't have to always look outward. Look inward at what your organization is doing and ask the question, can I get access to that information and add it into there? Or if nothing else, can you send something out on my behalf? So again, if you're higher ed, will your alumni association send out a message to the alumni that says, hey, all alumni get 15% off meeting planning services during the month of December or something like that, right? You don't always have to just think about collecting it for yourself. Who else can you tap into out there? How are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing perfect. All right, I'm going to set that and drop that in the process. Hey, you notice which one I saved? It was the phone. Okay, I'll close that back up. Hang on, sorry about that. Let's get back to time. There we go. All right, next up, foundational strategy, memberships, DMOs, and referrals. So this is another area that's important to think about. Now we're getting a little bit out of the digital ecosystem and into more of the human interaction, the human element, which I know is great. That's what everyone is looking for. But ask yourself, what memberships do you maintain to attract the right types of meetings and events to your venues? So what are some of the, let's just ask the room really quickly, what are some of the memberships that you maintain to get yourself in front of planners or individuals that might be planning meetings and events? Shout them out. Who's yes? Destination Colorado. So that's your local CVB, right? Or Destination Management Company, yes. DMO, yes. Others that you belong to? Chambers of Commerce. CVBs. What else? MPI. How many people are active in MPI? I mean, that's a great group. There is an MPI local chapter everywhere out there, and they are wonderful individuals. And again, even though they're there at 3 in the morning browsing around, the relationship part of that is still meaningful. And when you form a relationship with a planner at MPI, they take a much more active interest in who you are, what you're doing, and the likelihood that you'll at least be one of the 12 searches at 2 in the morning goes up dramatically. But they're a great group to be a part of. What else? Other memberships that people are tapped into?
We have 2. We formed a university-wide venue membership.
Okay.
So we share leads to keep the leads on the campus.
On the campus.
Another one, which goes hand in hand, is the local 2,100 sleeping rooms for hotels.
Okay. So you've got connections internal to your organization by saying, let's keep the business here. So anybody that's planning meetings, events, or has services to provide in that, you're collectively doing that. And with your local hoteliers. So sometimes people that you might even be in competition with. But again, if I can't handle it, let's keep it local, let's keep it regional so that we're able to do that. We'll actually touch on that a little bit with referrals here in a second as well too. Any other ones that are out there? I mean, again, there are just a ton of different organizations that you can join into. Now again, that is a time commitment. So the idea is that you're not just going to say, great, I sent in the check and I'm a member. Now if you do that, you will oftentimes be able to look up on the website the rest of the members, put them in your CRM, and start to do outreach to them. If you don't go and be in front of them and start to build a relationship, you're probably going to see a lot of those people immediately say, please take me off this list. How did I get on this list? Because planners get on a ton of lists that are out there. And so before you would ever do that, I would recommend you go to a meeting, you introduce yourself, you network a little bit, so when those emails start to come in, if you can actually host an event at your venue on behalf of that organization, like do an in-kind sponsorship or something like that, they love that stuff. And that's a great way to kind of set the stage before you dump them all into the CRM and start blasting the information out of there. What is your relationship like with your DMO CVB? So again, how many people work closely with their DMO or CVB in their local community? I see a few hands going up. And I know in some cases it's not easy. It's not the kind of thing that you can do, or sometimes they're not as receptive to your type of venue being a part of what's going on. But most of the time, that's not the case. Most of the time, they're very welcome to have a conversation with you about how you can partner with them and they can partner with you, about how they can make you aware of leads. Depending on your locality, sometimes there's a cost to do that, sometimes it's free, it just depends on where you're at. But at the end of the day, they can be your greatest advocate for the things that you're doing for a couple of reasons. One, is that they want to see business come into your locality, and they get to report that and record that as a part of their annual sales and goals and outcomes. And so in a lot of cases, you're able to just pass along information about things that you're doing that they can include in their reports, and it makes them look good. And it's nice information to share with the community. I used to do that when I was the conference manager at the University of Arizona. So I would book all sorts of stuff all summer long, and I would just send a report to my contact at the CVB at the end of the summer and say, here you go, here's 42,000 more bed nights that you can include in the annual CVB report. When maybe only 1 or 2 of those things were things that I'd worked on with the CVB. But they were meetings and events happening in Tucson. They were a part of the picture. It's just that no one had ever had the conversation before and said, let's share this information with one another. The other reason that they can do that is because sometimes, for some of you, you may be looked at as unfair competition or as not the most desired competition with the convention centers and the hotels and the hotel ballrooms in the area. And again, I see people nodding their head. They're like, yeah, been there, done that. But that's a big part of it, is if you can build a strong relationship with your CVB or your DMO, they can be the ones to explain to people, no, this is additive. Or no, they were only going to go to the football stadium because that's the environment they were looking for. They didn't want we all know there's a ton of groups out there. I mean, we are unique venues for a reason. There are tons and tons of events and meetings that want to be not at hotel ballrooms and convention centers. And your DMO, your CVB can be that advocate that reminds people that this wasn't something that you stole from a hotel. This was something that wouldn't have been here at all if it hadn't been at this venue in the first place. All right? And are there opportunities to work on business together? So are there citywides coming up? Are there things that you can collaborate with 3 or 4 local venues and do something that's bigger than any of you could do by yourself? Now again, I know this takes time, and this is one that has to be you or your chief sales and outreach person in your organization. Because again, there's a very strong relationship of trust that has to be built with your CVB, with your DMO, to make those things happen. And again, Susan's going to dig into that with a breakout session later this afternoon. And then the last one is thinking about referrals. Now I know I said before that we're all competing with one another in this room, and it's true. But the question is do you have partners locally, regionally, and nationally that you can refer potential business to and who refer business back to you? Because again, similar to the point here, if you want to keep that business in your community, well then if you have a lead and you can't service it and you let it drop and you don't tell anyone about it, chances are they're going to go someone else on the list, and it might not be in your community at all, right? Or if you are, again, in a network of arenas and stadiums and you can't service it, do you have someone else? AEG, I would assume, does cross referrals to one another, but I also know that's an assumption because I've been in large bureaucratic organizations. I know sometimes things don't always work out that way. If you're an independent, do you have people that you can share with and again get reciprocal agreements with? It takes some trust. I get it before you start saying. But if you can't service it anyways, do you have people you trust that you can pass it to? And will they pass those things back to you? Because these are great sources, foundational ways of getting business that you're not spending time and energy and effort on after you establish the relationship. You're just getting a phone call or an email from your partner that says, here's an opportunity, take a look at it. All right? And then marketplace. So are you aligned with a third-party marketplace site that attracts the business you're looking for? Well, now everybody in this room should raise their hand because Unique Venues is a third-party marketplace, and you're all here because you're clients of Unique Venues, and we thank you for that. Chuck's not here in the moment, right? There are others out there. Like, I have to be honest from all ethical standpoints and say, we're great. We are the Unique Venues marketplace for people looking for non-traditional stuff. But you all know there's others out there that you can get into that will refer leads to anybody out there. There's some specialized one, like he said it before, we're not the wedding wire or the knot. If you're really big into weddings, we do weddings, it's a subsection of ours, but I would never not tell you if you're really like, I want weddings, you need to go sign up for Wedding Wire and the Knot. Like, that's where you're going to find the most activity out there. So are you aligned with the third-party marketplaces that make the most sense and deliver you the business that you're looking for? Some stats for you. 92% of U.S. consumers shopping online in April of 2021 used a marketplace. This is the way, I mean, again, we all know this, right? Where do we all start our shopping journey? Amazon, which is the world's largest third-party marketplace in existence, right? This is the way we look at it. But a good statistic to think about, and really good for unique venues, 42% of those shoppers in April 2021, they used a niche marketplace, which was up from 29% in 2020. So people are moving away to some extent from just saying, I'm going to go look at what's on Amazon. They're doing a search and they're finding other smaller marketplaces because they're looking for things that have a little bit more flair, or a different identity, or just don't feel like it's kind of that same. I mean, again, Amazon's great. I love that I can order something that shows up my door tomorrow, or if, as I know some of you can order it shows up in 2 hours. It's wonderful. But there's also kind of, we all know it. I don't want, they're not bad products. They're just Amazon products. And sometimes you're looking for something a little bit different and splashier and whatever, and that's where these niche marketplaces have popped up to give you the option to do it, and people are getting savvier about finding those things out there. Now, when you choose your marketplace, here's a really important question. And again, I know some people are making notes and saying, I got work to do when I get back. Do you keep your listing current with all contact information, photos, videos, and relevant information? All right? So if you've had staffing changes in the last 6 months, have you updated your third-party marketplace listing? I wish I could say we never found that on our unique venues profiles, but we find it all the time. Where the email address listed goes to a person that isn't there any longer, and we haven't found out about it. You know, we'll go in and someone will say, why do I keep getting leads for 700 people? And we're like, because you say it says 700 capacity, and then they go, oh, we had to remove that meeting room for renovations, and now it only seats 500. Well, again, if you don't update the listing, you're going to get bad information off of it, right? These are things that for all of the marketplaces that you may be participating in that you need to keep current and relevant for the things that are going on. Now, and are you leveraging it with higher positioning or website presence? So do you have an opportunity to be a top listing? Do you have an opportunity for a banner ad? Do you have an opportunity to participate in some ways that showcases your venue above the others out there? And are your processes streamlined to respond to leads, inquiries, and bookings within 24 to 72 hours? Now, this is critical, right? If you're going to spend all this time and money on putting up a website and being on a third-party marketplace, are you ready when the leads come your way? And Chuck said it before. We hear all the time from planners, I didn't hear from any of the venues that my lead was sent to. And I get it. Everyone's busy. You all have a million things to do. But they are looking for that quick and ready response. Are you ready? Now, here's a statistic. I'm not going to call anyone out here because I honestly don't remember who all was on the list. But we instituted a new service for some of our venues this summer called CallRail. And basically what it does is it allows us to know when someone clicks on the telephone button and calls you through the unique venue, through your unique venues profile. So we're able to better track engagement and know that these are also potential leads that have come your way. So we had to take your primary number and put it into an electronic system that would allow us to do this. So before we did it, we did what any responsible business would do. We called all those numbers to make sure they were right, because we know not everybody keeps their information current and relevant. And we had 102 venues that we added into the system. 23% of those calls in this campaign failed. And when I say failed, I mean rang and rang and rang and never answered, permanent busy signal, or even worse, person that had no idea what meetings and events were or who to talk to or why their phone was ringing based off of the information on third-party marketplace site. I see some people smiling out there. Either that's you or you're just like, thank goodness that's not me. But even for the ones that didn't fail, 53% of them went to voicemail. So again, here's someone that might be ready to book, and they're calling, and they're getting a voicemail message. And, I hate to say it, because we all broke it up. I did like 12 calls. I think 4 of my voicemails were, I'm really sorry, we're out of the office due to the pandemic. We're all working from home. It would be better if you emailed me at blah, 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 blah. Like that was your message to a planner that's ready to book. I'm working from home. It's better if you email me because no one's checking this line. Again, I'm not calling anyone out because we were all dealing with some really heavy stuff during the past couple of years, but this is really important things that you have to do if you want to be successful. If we're going to talk about activating a sales plan, foundationally, you've got to be ready to do it. All of these foundational things that we've talked about all along, if they're not up to par, you can drive as much traffic through targeted strategies as you want, but you're not going to achieve the results if they're not getting good info on your website, if you don't have enough contacts in there to drive information outward, if your marketplace listing is out of date, or worse, you're not answering your phone or your emails, then everything else we're going to talk about going forward, I would say don't do it, right? Take some time, work on these foundational strategies, get your house in order, and then you're ready to move forward. All right? All right. Because then that's what we're going to talk about after the break coming up. And I got a few more slides here, but we're doing really well. Is we're going to talk about how to build your sales toolkit with the targeted strategies that you need to really fill that pipeline for the long term. And these are some of the ones that we're going to talk about, not exactly all of them. Email and outreach, drip campaigns, sponsorships, I touched on them briefly, sales calls, internal and external, digital advertising, new program development, familiarization tours, and film and television. These are all different ways that you can drive the kinds of business, going all the way back to the beginning. What is my mission? What are the kinds of groups, the events that I want to serve? What am I looking for? These are all different ways that you can kind of drive activity, make people aware that you do it, and move them through the sales funnel to get them to a decision and ultimately signing on the dotted line when they come out of witness protection program, and get you the business that you're looking for. Now, one of the ones I want to highlight really quickly is film and television, because this is one that's actually come up several times for me in the last 12 months that I've been out doing consulting with various clients across the country. More and more people are thinking about getting into the film and television market. How many people in here do things with film and TV? Few people out there, right? So just a quick show. Is film and TV a really difficult market to serve because they're uber demanding and need lots of stuff and everything's last minute and all that? Show of hands. It's the same people, they just raised their hands. Can you make a lot of money off of it? Show of hands. All right, so this is one that if you're really thinking about a different way of using your venue and making some good revenue, know that it's a lift. Right? Again, you can talk to some of those people that raised their hand about what it really takes. Like I've got one client that wanted to get into it. We came up with some strategies for him, and boy, is he into it. And every time he calls me, he says, I'm not sure why we decided to do this. And yet they're making good money off of it. But it is demanding. And it's the kind of thing, again, that if you make the commitment and you're good at it, this one is very much a word of mouth. So once a couple of production scouts figure out that you can be responsive, you do take care of things last minute, you do throw staff at stuff, your venues really do work, you've got the right power requirements, you can park 18 trailers in a parking lot somewhere and all that kind of stuff, word gets around, and at that point you almost don't have to do any targeted outreach because that network of production scouts really talks to one another about, oh, you need to do this, this is the venue you need to call for that. So again, I'm not going to go deep into it here. I wanted to touch on it in this part of the presentation because it is something, if you're interested, you can always come find me or find one of the people that raised their hands and ask some more questions. Can be very, very lucrative if you've got the staff to be able to handle it. And that's what we're going to handle in the second half. Now, to pull together the sales action plan, what you need to do is you need to spend a little bit of time thinking about kind of some fundamental number exercises. And I know this is, again, for some people, like for me, this is my favorite part of doing a sales action plan. I'm a numbers guy, and so I love doing this part of it. But the first thing you do is you sit down and you say to yourself, what's my average yield per activity? So what you want to do is not make your life complicated and try to figure out exactly what kind of groups you might attract with your strategies. Let's just pick an average number. So what's the average group size that you typically have in your facility? Is it 50? Is it 250? Not aspirationally, where do you want to be? But let's just be realistic. What do you typically serve? And let's build out an average yield related to that. So what's the revenue that we generate? Now again, you might have a couple different categories. So sometimes I work with a client and I will put together an average projection for a youth program and an adult program. Makes sense, right? Oftentimes the needs for youth are very different than the needs for adults. Sometimes I will put together a difference between overnight programs and day programs. Makes sense, right? If they're there using your overnight beds, that's probably going to be a higher revenue return. But what I do is pick a nice conservative number and say, okay, like a venue might be able to hold a group up to 1,500, but on average, they bring in groups that are 200 in size. So what I do is I use 200 for all of my planning because I'd much rather do that and know that they're realistic or conservative numbers than when the group of 700 comes in, it's going to blow away anything that was in the sales action plan as a strategy and a yield, all right? The next thing you need to do, and again, this takes some time, but you need to sit down and you need to think about what's my average yield per activity. So we talked about that email outreach, and I showed you some statistics. If you're going to blast out to 1,000 people in the travel and hospitality, how many people are going to even click through? Do you remember? Anyone? 14. 1,000 emails, 14 people are going to click through. Your conversion on that might be 1, right? Maybe if you did a really good job creating engagement in your messaging, maybe it's 2, right? So you have to sit down and think through, like, how many people am I going to reach with this stuff? Now, if a sales call is a strategy, well, you're going to, and we'll talk about this next hour, a sales call is someone that you're going to target because they are a high opportunity lead, right? You're not going to fly to Boston and sit down with a client that's making a decision if you think there's no chance that you're going to get that piece of business. So if you put together a sales call strategy and you're going to go make 30 sales calls in a 4-day period, well, you might look at yielding 4 or 5 of those, maybe even more depending on your previous, again, this is why we track success. You can look backwards and say, last time I did a sales call, how effective was it? How many pieces of business did I land? What did the average yield look like, right? And again, the idea here is that a lot of times people will do strategies because they came to a conference and Joel said I should be doing this. But I don't want you to be doing it just because I said it. I want you to be doing it because there's some thought behind who are we reaching out to, and what are we hoping to achieve with it, and what have we witnessed in the past that tells us how successful it's going to be. Because if you've tried paid search advertising and it's never worked for you, and you've assessed it and you know you're doing it the right way and your messaging is good and everything else, then don't do paid search advertising. Do what works for your venue based on tried and true and evaluation and your evaluated methods, okay? So once you do all of that, then you look at estimating the average timeline for your yield. So now it's not only, okay, I'm going to send out 1,000 emails, or let's say I'm going to send out 10,000 emails. I'm going to get 140 clicks out of it. I'm going to yield 8 pieces of business, whatever your conversion rates tell you it's going to be. And then it's when are those 8 pieces of business going to come in, right? Now that might be based on your messaging. If you were like, book by March, then you know when that business is going to come in. Well, book by March might be book by March or book and meet by March. Could be 1 or 2, right? So if it's book by March, but it's for 3 summers out, then you have to think about, okay, where's the revenue actually going to fall in this cycle? And what we do when we're working with a client to put one together, and again, you're going to get the deck, so you get this slide. This is just one example of, this would be a series of corporate strategies that have a budget for the strategy if a budget is required, and a yield. So when I talk about a MPI national membership, you're going to spend $500 to get an MPI so you can interact with your local MPI, but I'm not indicating any yield off of that because just joining MPI doesn't do you anything. What's going to work is when you use your MPI contacts to prospect, and you spend some money traveling to the meetings and hanging out with people or giving them a nice little giveaway that remembers your venue or whatever it is. And then in my world, and these numbers are tied back to an average group size and revenue estimate, and then an average yield based on the activity. You know, this is, I do my work, and in year 1, I might book, I think this one would have been 2-day meetings, because I think it was $4,500 for a day meeting at this particular client, based on my estimates for what we put together. Which doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? So you can add up numbers very quickly, even when you're looking at conservative numbers out there. And then eventually, by year 2, now maybe we've landed, that probably still doesn't have an overnight in it. That's probably day meetings. And now we've got an overnight out here in year 3. but all this activity started over here. And so you're thinking about what am I doing and where does it land, and you put it together in a grid that allows you to kind of track, okay, here's the strategies, here's the budget. Again, the budget numbers will probably look bigger than anything you've ever done if you really want to accelerate your growth, but you lay it out so you can look at it. And in our sales action plans, then each of these has a line item for what is the strategy, what do we mean by that, any notes and budget notes and things like that to help the clients know what it is that they're doing. Okay? And then finally, the last step in all of this is to think about project management. So you take, once you put all this together, you take it and you put it into a grid, whether it's we use Excel for ours, and then we recommend that a client take it and just start adding columns on the outer end of it. So put something in there for each of those strategies that says the dates. When am I going to pull this one off? Put something in there for assignments. Who on my team is going to do it? Is it me? Is it my sales manager? Is it some other staff member? So data prospecting might be that assistant in the office or a student that you found or an intern in your organization that allows you to do it. Whereas, when you get to doing sales calls, that would be you or your sales manager or someone like that. And then completion percentage. So where are we in the process of this? And results. What did we yield out of it? Again, that's the most important part of it, is to go back and say, I did all of this. How did I do on my projections? Did I really get 3-day meetings out of it? Did I eventually get 5 or 6, whatever that was? And then did I get 8 and an overnight out of it? So that I can track back, and the next time I go to do that series of activities, I can say, will I have similar success? Yes or no? Maybe I learned a lot. Maybe I think I'll do better. And you're ready to keep updating the plan as you go. Because that's really what the final piece of this is to activate the sales plan, is to then sit down and establish a regular cycle for reviewing progress. So again, a lot of people will put the plan together, say, great, I did it, and maybe some people got some assignments, and then we don't think about it for 3 years. Then we come back and go, that's not what you want to do. Like, this should be a regular part. I have a couple clients. This is a regular part of their monthly staff meeting where they pull it up for 15 minutes. They don't talk about the whole plan every time they pull it up. They pull it up and say, what are the things we're doing right now, and how is it going? And are there any adjustments that we need to make on the fly or as we're going? Or is there anything that's going to inform us for what the next cycle looks like? You modify the plan and make changes as necessary. So again, I'm a big believer in, these are all estimates. And life works out differently. You don't have to be beholden to it just because you put it in the spreadsheet. If it's not working, or if you've learned something, make an adjustment. Make sure you communicate it. Right? We're all accountable to someone, so make sure your boss or whoever knows that you've upped or down, depending on what it might be, but make sure people know about it. And then update and extend that plan annually. So we recommend with our clients that we go 3 years out, but then 9 to 12 months from now, they need to be extending that plan out into the next cycle. So again, now what are we going to do in 2026? And then as we go another year, what are we going to do in 2027? And to keep that rolling, because once it's part of your culture of doing this, then you're always going to be in the position to very quickly know, I am doing multiple strategies across multiple channels, targeting the kinds of business that I want, and hopefully keeping that pipeline full and achieving the results, whatever they were, revenue or other mission-oriented things, that we're trying to accomplish with our sales action plan.